It was about 70,000 years ago that human beings first started to really ruin things for everybody. That's when our ancestors began to migrate out of Africa and spread across the globe, first into Asia and a while later into Europe. The reason this made a lot of people rather unhappy is that back then, our species, Homo sapiens, weren't the only humans on the planet. Far from it. Exactly how many other species of humans were knocking around at that point is a matter of some debate. The business of taking fragmentary skeletons or fragmentary DNA and trying to work out exactly what counts as a separate species or subspecies, or just a slightly weird version of the same species, is a tricky one. It's also an ideal way to start an argument, should you ever find yourself among a group of paleoanthropologists with some time to kill. But however you classify them, there were at least a couple of other types of human on the planet back then, of which the most famous is Homo Neanderthalensis, or, as they're better known, the Neanderthals. The result of previous human migrations from Africa, they'd been living across much of Europe and large parts of Asia for over 100,000 years. They basically had quite a good thing going. Unfortunately for them, just a few tens of thousands of years after our ancestors rocked up on the scene, the blink of an eye in evolutionary terms, the Neanderthals and all our other relatives were gone from the face of the earth. In a pattern that would quickly establish itself throughout human history, as soon as we arrive, there goes the neighbourhood. Within a few thousand years of modern humans moving into an area, the Neanderthals start to vanish from the fossil record, leaving behind only a few ghostly genes that still haunt our DNA. There was clearly a bit of interbreeding between the Neanderthals and the interlopers who were replacing them. If you're of European or Asian descent, for example, there's a good chance that somewhere between 1 and 4% of your DNA is Neanderthal in origin. Exactly why and how we survived, while our cousins got the first train to Extinctionville, is another subject of debate. In fact, lots of the most likely explanations are themes that will keep cropping up again and again in this book. We might have accidentally wiped out the Neanderthals by bringing diseases with us as we migrated that they didn't have any resistance to. A large part of the history of humanity is really just the history of diseases we managed to pick up on our travels and then give to each other. We might have got lucky with a fluctuating climate that we were better able to adapt to. The evidence suggests our ancestors lived in bigger social groups and communicated and traded over a much larger area than the more isolated, stick-in-the-mud Neanderthals, meaning they could draw on more resources when a cold spell hit. Or maybe we just murdered them, because hey, that's what we do. In all likelihood, there probably isn't a single neat explanation, because that's not how things normally work. But many of the most plausible explanations have one thing in common: our brains and how we use them. It's not quite as simple as the idea that we were smart and they were dumb. Neanderthals weren't the lumbering numbskulls of popular stereotype. They had brains as big as we do and were making tools, controlling fire, and producing abstract art and jewellery in Europe tens of thousands of years before Homo sapiens ever came along and started gentrifying everything.